This is like where I keep certain things. This one's insane. And I'll send you a photograph of what this kind of looks like, but these are crushed sparrows, birds, crushed in the street, which is kind of cool. And I might look like a complete lunatic, but it is what it is kind of thing.
Usually people collect things that they think might have like a resale value.
You mean these sparrows don't have a resale value?
Bobby's always been an anomaly where like he fucking rips. He's always been on the New York scene or even in San Francisco, but he was always like on his own shit.
I don't know how kids would react to Bobby's footage now. It's just a different take on skating. They might not be like the hardest tricks, but he's thought harder about it than most of you have thought about any of the things you're putting out. And it could just be like a little
It's like a gift and a curse for him, to be honest, because he was such a deep thinker that maybe he overthought it a bit.
Son of a bitch!
He could have and should have been probably bigger than just a myth.
He helped create like modern New York skating, you know, like stoops, stairs, cellar doors. He makes simple things beautiful.
He was one of those two-coast rippers. I've mostly connected with him in the modern era as Bobby Puleo, the numerologist and skate historian, which I find wildly interesting and entertaining. And he's still ripping, which is cool.
I don't want to call it a disease, but it's an addiction. Like, I'm addicted to skateboarding. I have to kind of do it. It gives me a sense of accomplishment. You know, even to this day, like there's still tricks that I'm like, oh, let me try and learn this trick. And I still have great respect for it. And so therefore, I'm not going to try and damage my body that will inhibit me or prohibit me from doing it. I mean, even this today, I'm like, I don't want to do this. I'd rather be out skating, you know?
Welcome back to Epically Latered at the famed Brooklyn Banks. I mean, obviously, legendary spot. A lot of people watching probably know the history. This episode is about a skater. His name's Bobby Puleo. It's hard to explain now, seeing his footage, how interesting and unique his skating was, whether in the spot selection, trick selection, sort of an identity around it. Tons of our favorite skaters were inspired by what Bobby was doing. And there was almost a cult following around his skateboarding. He's into conspiracy theories. He's into collecting like found objects to the point where you're sometimes like, is he a hoarder? Bobby was someone that had like a big impact on skating in a subtle way, who I like and I'm a fan of, and I hope you enjoy it. The Bobby Puleo episode.
I consider you a pro skater, but then do you not skate for anybody?
I don't know if like retired is like the correct term, like, but what is a pro skateboarder? I guess somebody who has stopped skateboarding is no longer a pro skateboarder. They're no longer a skateboarder if they've stopped skateboarding. But then again, there's like also like, you're never not a skateboarder. I don't like this stain. I'm really self-conscious about this stain. It bothers the shit out of me. No, I don't have anything to change into. I grew up in this town called Clifton, New Jersey. It's about 11 miles outside of Manhattan, pretty working class. I was friends with this guy named John Swed. One summer, John Swed went down to the Jersey Shore with his family and came back with a town and country skateboard. And we just took turns like kind of going down the driveway, and I was like, this is the shit, you know? And so I begged my mom and dad for a skateboard, and then that Christmas, I got a Powell Peralta Sword and Skull. And then it was kind of on. I think what probably attracted me and still attracts me is the sheer like possibilities that you can do with a skateboard, like trick-wise. The news we would get was New York news, and it was like, this murder in Manhattan, or, you know, this robbery in Brooklyn, or, you know, whatever it was. My mom was like, do not go to that place. Like, you will get kidnapped, abducted, killed, you know, whatever. And then finally, my friend was driving there one day. So I got in and we drove straight to the banks. I thought the Brooklyn Banks was like this sprawling, gigantic place. And I remember getting out and being like, this place is like the size of a freaking basketball court. Like, it's so small. From that day on, it was just like, I had to go every chance I got.
What's up? My name is Bob. I'm from New Jersey. I like to skateboard in New York City. It's all about thinking. and skateboarding and wrecking yourself, and wrecking your legs, and wrecking your arms.
I would always hear about Bobby Puleo before I ever met him. A lot of us from Jersey, we would all skate the city on the weekend and everything like that. Go to the banks, and people would always like, this guy Bobby Puleo, he's the illest. He seemed like this underground legend, but I had never seen him. And then eventually I met him, skating around New York and became friends with a lot of other kids around his way from Clifton. Yeah, he was fucking amazing back then.
And then very quickly I got on Nimbus.
I remember him skating for Nimbus, but that was I've skated for Nimbus too. That was my first board sponsor. Shout out Charlie Butterly.
Jeff was kind of like a thing because Jeff was super good. He just knew what he was doing.
Bobby's style and just the way he looked on a skateboard is so unique and identifiable. His stance, and you can almost see like his center of gravity is like set back towards the tail, like super low. It's almost like he's like got an engine in his back leg. Like he's always like cocked, ready to go.
I'm from West Orange, New Jersey, and Bobby's from Clifton, New Jersey. It's just kind of a known thing that like people hate people from New Jersey. And so like whenever we would come to the city, people would steal your board or like start fights with you. It like kind of didn't even matter how good you were. You were still just from New Jersey. But Bobby was so good, and I think probably just not annoying. And so like he just had a lot of respect. Like I feel like Tim probably never got the respect Bobby did.
See Tim be annoying.
Hell yeah, Tim's annoying. Like that was kind of like his shtick, was being annoying. But Tim was also really fucking good.
Yeah, coming from Jersey, you definitely had the odds stacked against you, like, yeah, Jersey up in here, whatever, even though it's, you're older, it's a river. It's a little river. You're on the other side. You could wave across the river and they could see you. You're like, hey, what's up? What's going on? But yeah, I mean, if you were good and you're kind of ripping in and just weren't a complete dork, I guess I learned that about not being a complete dork.
New Yorkers, I guess we were kind of a proud bunch. We didn't really like anybody at all. From that crew in the mid-90s, I would say Bobby was the first one that was like, oh dude, you can't fucking deny how good this dude is. It doesn't matter where the fuck he's from, he fucking rips.
So Nimbus goes out, and basically all of these guys that rode for Nimbus now have no sponsors or whatever. Right at that moment, Zoo starts, and there's a net to fall into. It's pretty chaotic. That scene at Zoo was wild. No one kind of knew what they were doing or what they were getting into, because the industry is changing. I'm going there to pick up boards. And right in 94, Dune is like, I'm gonna start Metropolitan. He recruits basically all of Zoo. And all of a sudden, Dune starts putting stereo boards into my boxes. And I'm like looking at these boards, I'm like, these are fucking dope. Now, I'm going to Zoo and I'm like, I don't even know if I'm gonna get a box of boards. Dune asked me to ride for stereo, and I'm like, hell yeah, So all of a sudden now, I'm out of Zoo.
I don't have a one-day memory of meeting Bobby Puleo. I think it was just like a gradual thing. I was stoked on him. He added something unique to stereo, which was like an East Coast vibe.
Like stereo was pretty dope at that time, and you're like, damn.
I flew out there, didn't know a single person, just went down to the Embarcadero. And then as fast as I got on stereo, I got kicked off for like unknown reasons. I just got this phone call from Dune one day, and he's like, yeah, I gotta let you go. And I was like, what? Like, I didn't even ask why. I was just like, okay, bye.
I wish I knew more about that. Did it have something to do with the tour? Maybe it was just a lack of vibe with some of the deluxe guys, because at that point, everyone went on tour together. So it was tough for some people to assimilate, especially if they like had a different vibe.
He wasn't scared to just kind of let people know exactly what was on his mind. So he did definitely offend quite a few people. Myself personally, never.
I've never had a beef with him. I don't know, man. When you're growing up in New York, I guess, around this area, like everybody had fucking some chip on their shoulder and like something to say about someone, but and then when you're young, they're gonna all stand up for what they feel and think. So yeah, sure. He had a strong personality, like I said, and with that comes probably some beef and some drama or whatever.
We did a tour through Europe in the summer of '98, and I remember Bobby annoying a bunch of people on this trip. We were getting on one flight, we were going from country to country, and he put his passport in his check-in bag, That became a whole issue that like he was trying to get his passport back, kept doing shit like that. That was like jamming things up for the rest of us. A couple of them were like, I don't want to ever go on a trip with Bobby again.
He was very curious. He would ask a lot of questions. And he was probably really green too. I think people were kind of surprised that he got put on so quickly. And then he was gone. I was young enough that I don't think I was like sensitive to maybe like, is Bobby okay with this? Did that bum him out? Did anyone say anything fucked up to him? Because that's just not how you think when you're that age.
These are cool. These are TV. These are all the Ed stickers.
Oh, TV.
Yeah. Todd Prince signed. Yeah, this is like kind of tip of the iceberg shit. You know, I like stuff from this time period because this is like when I grew up skating and going into shops and like looking at all these boards and stuff. This graphic was a huge influence on me. This is all my kind of like world blind stuff. There's some
cool.
crazy shit in there. You could open it up and just kind of like look at whatever.
And then the world at large, the skate world, got to know Bobby Puleo through the FTC video. I feel like his skating had changed by that point. He definitely started looking to skate things that you wouldn't typically have looked at in the past. Maybe doing a more basic trick on something that's grittier and harder to skate rather than doing like the kind of hardest trick at like a perfect spot.
I was just filming with Mesa. Like I had access to a filmer that would film anything, you know? And I didn't always have that in New York.
I mean, I was in San Francisco at a time where there wasn't really a lot of filmers. I was just a young guy with the camera. I think the main reason Bobby got into it was he had just gotten kicked off stereo and had just come to California, I think because of stereo, but then he got kicked off and he was kind of just like ready to go.
I didn't know I was gonna have a part. Like I didn't know any of that shit, you know? It just kind of happened.
And like, to be honest, like filming a shop video back then, it was kind of a chore to get people to take it seriously. I don't know how long he was in San Francisco for. He was definitely living there, but he had like a lot of ideas and it was him taking me to spots like I had never seen. Obviously the grind was like a big deal.
He saw skateboarding differently. He would go to a space and everyone's skating that thing and he could see something out of something over here. Honestly, I think he changed skateboarding in a way. It's like if I was to explain him today, I'd say all this like interesting spots you're skating now, like I would say Bobby might have been the one to kind of spark that creative change.
Did you ever see him like collecting trash?
I remember going to his house and that was like one of the early times where like I saw somebody, it was just like a mattress, like 3 little books. So he definitely wasn't collecting anything at that point because he had like 5 items in his whole room.
This bag is like the most common shit that I find, and I kind of keep it close because like almost every day I'm coming home with something that's gonna go into this bag.
You've seen his found art, right? So his found art is he finds trash, but the same kinds of trash. So the same bubblegum wrapper, and he finds them over and over and over and over again, and then he displays them in patterns.
All right, here, you wanna get grossed out? Like, this is every toothbrush I've ever found. So there you go.
He collects like the weirdest shit. And you're like maybe the American Picker guys one day will go to Bobby's house and be like, dude, this guy's fucking got everything.
It's like performance art. It's not about like the fact that there's like 9 packs of Skittle wrappers or whatever on this paper and who fucking cares? It's garbage from the streets of New York. It's the performance of Bobby Puleo tooling around the city being like, I gotta find it's gotta be tropical blue. I need 6 more tropical blue packs of Skittles.
Traditionally, it started out as skating, and I was just constantly like looking at the ground so much that I started to basically like see patterns of like discarded objects. As years went by, it was just like, I need a reason to be doing this. So like, I started to kind of like try and amass 9 of an object. That became like the goal, and then if it went past 9, then I started to kind of shoot for like 81 of an object.
Why 81?
That's 9 collections of 9. You know, so in here is 81 Tylenol packs. This is 81 Coca-Cola caps. It's kind of like a hobby that's kind of like turned into like treasure hunt kind of thing for me. But I'm conscious.
Get rid of stuff? Like something that's just like, this is just too much of this.
Yeah, not really. Yeah, not really.
Because it's dangerously close to becoming a hoarder.
Well, yes, but I don't think hoarders necessarily go out and collect stuff. And so maybe in that, yeah, is it a problem? I don't know, maybe. Well, let me ask you, would you consider this hoarding?
No, Well, it's a gray area.
Yeah, it's a gray area.
How did he end up on Mad Circle?
Bobby was out skating with Mesa and me a lot. Aaron was like, dude, you gotta get him, man. And I was like, I know, like Bobby's the sickest. And at that point, Justin really wasn't in the scene. I would probably go to him and be like, hey, we gotta get this dude, Bobby. Sorry, Justin, but you wouldn't have known. But yeah, I think, I think it was me.
We're just doing this because Bobby's interesting.
Bobby is interesting. I actually don't remember when I met Bobby for the first time.
I just like to see how lost I can get in a trip. Sometimes with me, it comes out one way, it comes out the other way. I just skateboard, I think a good painter is gonna paint regardless. That's what's most important to me now.
The reason it's called 5 flavors is that it's just referencing the individual styles of each person on the team and the desire that I had, and I think everyone else did, to present that kind of skateboarding where there wasn't really a kind of hard set of rules around who could ride for Mad Circle.
It's 5 flavors, right? So it was me, Carl Watson, Pontus, Rob Welsh, and Bobby. And it's funny now, I was like, oh, it's a good team. And now to look at where they are today or to who they are, I'm like, damn, that was a pretty dynamic team. And maybe I didn't appreciate it as much as I should have. But we were just like all kids at the time.
That was very short-lived, but for a period of time, it included all of these people who have maintained a really prominent presence in skateboarding well after I, kind of removed myself from it.
Justin, I think he was, spoke to us differently, and he talked about skateboarding differently, and I think there was probably some influence for sure. And I know Bobby and Justin probably really riffed.
He has really great ideas and he executes them. He has a very rich imagination. I actually made money at that point for skateboarding. I turned pro for Mad Circle.
I think there's a freedom in having the kind of mindset that Bobby has that isn't boxed into one of these categories, right? There's the risk-taking, big stairs and rails. There's the kind of maybe lower to the ground but high skill level stuff. And Bobby kind of mixes the two and adds an element of viewing the environment in a way that you can use multiple objects to make a really interesting kind of skate scene.
And it was heartbreaking to watch Mad Circle go out of business, but at that point, Justin was just like kind of done with it.
Well, skateboard companies is like kind of keeping a band together or something like that, right? It burns you out. It burns you out. And I was burnt. It happens in any kind of creative endeavor. After a period of time, people go their separate ways or whatever.
I don't know if I had my foot out the door filming 5 flavors, but I definitely didn't feel like it was like super solid. It's funny when I got on Chocolate, Bobby, he was like, how did you get on Chocolate? It was like, how'd you get on Chocolate? Or how did you get on Chocolate? And I was like, I got on Chocolate. Whatever, but I could tell I don't know. He didn't see something in me. He didn't see it, So it's kind of funny.
I don't feel like skating this thing anymore. All right, no more. Fuck you.
I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna move back to New York and just start mining the shit I grew up skating and trying to continue this thing. At one point I was skating downtown or something and I saw Gio Moya riding an Infamous board and I picked up his board and I was like, what is this board? I was like, how do I get one of these? And then they just asked me to ride for it.
Bobby took a different route probably before a lot of people out here, looking for spots and filming on them and not telling anyone. Something like that Infamous video part that he had was just really cool and just felt unique because he kind of sussed it out the way he did. And then, fast forward 2 years after that and it's that's East Coast skating and everyone here does it. I mean, it's kind of went into this whole era till now.
Don't you fucking stare at me, man.
If you follow his Instagram, he's really into coincidental numbers and dates that lead to some higher truth. I don't know what that's called. Is that numerology?
In my opinion, there's some pretty significant stuff that repeats itself. Obviously, one of the things that I deal with is the number 33. If you just look at Christianity, Christ performs 33 miracles. He's crucified at the age of 33.
It gives you some sort of glimpse into how this dude's brain works.
But then if you get into the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, it has 33 degrees.
He really likes the numbers and the conspiracies, which, again, it tracks for him. You know, some people, you would see that shit and it would like put you off of them. Knowing what I know about Bobby Puleo and seeing his career and how he does all these things, I'm like, it's perfect that he's a conspiracy. Of course he is.
And then you go on to, we'll leave 9/11 out of this, because this is like, 9/11 is like the granddaddy of like polarizing events.
Sometimes in the comments, I'll send numbers his way just to see if it leads anywhere. He doesn't seem to mind. But you'd be worried though if it was like, because yeah, some of that number stuff, you've seen those people.
Yada yada, I can, this is like spinning out, but, and I'm not trying to like convince anybody that this is like gospel, but I just find it personally interesting when you see numbers that might have some sort of like resonance or significance in repetition.
When conspiracy theories end up hurting people or like putting bad shit into the world, they're bad. But the reality of, for me, a conspiracy theory is like, we don't know shit about anything. And then people that are like, well, I know that's not true. You're like, well, you don't actually know either. What if Bobby's right?
Mark Johnson called me and he was just like, hey, like, I'm thinking about putting Bobby Puleo on. And I'm like, I think that's a great idea. Even though I was like, wow, that's so unexpected.
Next thing I know, I just got a phone call from them. It was Jerry and Mark on the line, and they just asked me to ride for Enjoy. And I was like, all right, whatever.
I was always a fan of Bobby, but when I met him and started skating with him and I started watching him, it made me go back and watch his stuff differently. It changed the way I skated. You can tell in Bag of Suck, there's a lot more like bank stuff, skinny ledges. It did give me the kind of illusion that I could also skate New York like him, which was not the case. It's tough there.
But you weren't on long enough to be in their video.
When I was living in New York, I didn't have anyone to film with. So yeah, I just couldn't get a part together. And I didn't really give a shit. It was just a disconnect. Like those guys were like, they're in California skateboard mode. I'm in New York skateboard mode. I understood like it's a great honor and convenience to get a check for skateboarding, but I'm not moving to San Jose to do that because I don't want to, In retrospect, I probably should have, but I also, that was just the decision I made.
Matt Eversole just told me like, yeah, like Bobby just doesn't really want to film for this video. And I was sad about that. I was disappointed, but at the same time, like he's very specific and particular about how he wants to be represented. I would have loved to see what he would have done, and for him to be in that video would have made it so much better. But from being his friend, I kind of understood.
I didn't want to go there to film.
Yeah.
And I did go there. At one point, Jerry had this van, and I was in the van with Jerry. I'm sitting shotgun, and Louis is in the back. Louis had like a bottle of like Bacardi or some shit. He's totally sober. By the time we got like an hour into like doing whatever the fuck we were doing, I looked back and Louis got his pants off. He's naked from his waist down, and he's just rolling around the back of the truck, like just completely like wasted. And that's not the reason I quit. I was terribly amused and entertained by that, but I was just like, this is not how I get anything done.
What's with boards that are in weird stores that have your name on?
I think it had to do with Infamous getting sold. They sold it to, I think, Chinese investors, and I think they purchased a bunch of like Infamous skateboards and just looked at what was on the graphic, and they would like saw my name, so they just like kept repeating the name, not even knowing like what it was. They're across the entire globe.
This is it. The Bobby Puleo China board. I had always heard about it, and then I was walking in downtown LA in the Toy District, and I just bought it because I just thought it was just such a funny thing to have. For someone who is so like specific about how they want to be portrayed, it is the most un-Bobby Puleo thing to ever exist.
Fuck you.
Yeah, after Enjoy, I went down to Philly to stay with Rich and Jack, Rich was in the process of editing Via, and I was just like, I think I could kind of fit on this. So I asked Rick, I had a guest trick in his part.
I don't know exactly where I met Bobby first, but I've known Bobby for, 15, 20 years, and I really respect his overall body of work. It's just that, he's a little intense. People think I'm intense, but he's just a different kind of intensity. Our thoughts on skating are so similar, more so than anybody else's. So that's why when he got on Traffic, it was so fitting. It's very fitting.
We all kind of saw eye to eye. We understood what the aesthetic was. Rick laid that out. It's about skating in the street. The checks just started kind of like not showing up. And I was still down. I was like, dude, I'm down for this brand. Then I was like, I can't survive. And then I started to kind of realize like, I should just be doing this myself. And then I never really did anything myself, but I was just like, I don't need this fucking madness, which is what it kind of turned into.
I think there's kind of a growing appreciation in this era in the direction of his style of skating. Just really viewing anything and everything as a potential skateable object.
I feel like anybody who's familiar with what I do, what I skate, it's pretty obvious like who are the skateboarders that I grew up enjoying watching and like take from. His static two part's definitely the ultimate part from Bob. That part essentially is kind of like the blueprint for what would happen like with skate videos after that. It must be pretty funny to like see what people are doing and just like, yeah, like if I didn't do what I did like 20 years ago, then like you wouldn't be doing that.
He's definitely that dude. He's had interviews where he's like, don't skate in your own town, don't come to someone else's town or whatever.
Mark Suciu dropped that part where he's skating all Philly spots. The filmmakers, whoever, was behind it, basically made him look like he was born in fucking South Philly. And I remember seeing it and being like, what the fuck is this? Isn't he from like California? So I kind of criticized it.
He was talking a little bit of shit, like look at this kid who's like traveling to the spot. And some of them were the spots that he had skated. And he's objecting like, when I was filming on those spots, we didn't think of them as spots. We were just going out skating and that's what was there. And that's why it was authentic and fun. And that's how our styles emerged.
Like I never became a poster boy for SF, because I rode for FTC. It was intimidating to like come from a different place and like be faced with these dudes that grew up here. I understood like New York is not a place, and Philly, they're not just places you go into and just stake your claim. And then literally like a fucking week and a half later, somebody hands me this like Thrasher or something, or whatever the hell it was. And Mark Suciu had like a firing line or something, and it's like favorite skateboarder, and boom, there's my name. And I was just like, fuck, dude, like, sorry,
Yeah, I love Bobby Puleo. His skating's so good. I feel like looking back, it's a little different than what it does to you when you watch it in 2002, 2003, when you first see like Static 2. At that time, my two favorite skaters for the summer were Bobby Puleo and Keith Huffnagel. I would just try to skate little curb cuts in Sunnyvale, California, just like him, or like try to find some back alley with a mock cellar door.
One day I'm getting out of the train at Delancey Street. All of a sudden I see this dude coming across the street towards me, and he introduces himself, Mark, and I kind of like knew what he looked like. And I was like, hey man, sorry about that shit. Like I don't know, I was just speaking my mind, like
hey, sorry about all that shit. I just feel like I was like wrapped up in a kind of, I forget what he said, but it was pretty funny. So now when I see him at the skate park, he pops in, rides his bike by, and I'll just say what's up, and we're cool now.
Original Gons? No grip tape. It's kind of cool.
Have you watched his videos about skate history?
I have watched those videos. I kind of like them. Every now and then we'll like DM each other little things. I'm surprised how much he's reverted to like an 80s nostalgia like expert, which I kind of like, to be honest, because I like 80s skateboarding more than 90s skateboarding, so we kind of like geek out on that stuff.
Growing up here, there was things that I always wondered about. And so I was like, oh shit, I could go do this, and it's like cool.
Like there was that time where he was like going to like skateboard conventions and like bringing stickers.
And I think the next one is I went to Lance Mountain's old house.
He's obsessed with skate history, but it extends to the space, the ground, which is weird to me.
Just random ass shit, like stuff that I think is interesting. I just go and I kind of like explore it.
Obviously Bob's obsessive. Whatever he's into it 110%. And I think his art, as crazy as it is to some people, what he's doing, there's a reason for doing it. Whether or not other people can see the reason behind that doesn't concern him. He's going to do it regardless.
This is what a framed object will look like when it's kind of like done. So hoarder or not hoarder, I don't know, whatever. But yeah, is it art? I don't know, it's something.
I love his artwork. I love his collections. The way that he recognizes pattern and sort of just, appropriates the everyday corporate design that's on product, just bullshit that people throw away. He can like repurpose it. I just love that he's so interested in it and he's so devoted to it.
It's sort of a shame that sometimes these things you have to be able to package to sell to the larger audience to understand when it wasn't necessarily the intention from the beginning.
To be honest, I think what I'm doing is I'm taking like a cross section of what it means to be alive in New York or on Earth. It's like, this is what we consume. This is what we throw out in the street. Much like skateboarding, I don't try to like find a sponsor. I don't try to like be an artist. I'm not trying to make money off of this stuff. Trying to think of like where we could go. Oh yeah, well.
I think Bobby's legacy would probably be looking at things even more uniquely and finding a way to skate them. And normally you can't turn your skate brain off. You look at every rail, every flight of stairs, even though you have no desire to skate it, whatever, you're like, oh, this would be good, and just somehow took it that much further with Bobby.
And he made every spot look good. Spots that you probably wouldn't give the time of day, like he gave it the time of day and made the spot look good and came up on something that looked good, made skateboarding look good. He's got that gift, yeah, that's for sure.
He has a lot more to contribute to skateboarding, and to the extent that he can be mostly left to skate and be creative, it'll be a benefit for the sport at large.
Holy fucking shit, you got real lucky. This is a bundle of $2,000 when the bank is transferring money into the, the armored car. Or maybe they just give it to people, but this is what a bundle of $2,000 would come in. I don't know how many I have of this particular one, but there's also like ones of like different designs or whatever, which is kind of cool. But there you go, you found something. We found something, yay! But yeah, this is the spot. We're doing Seinfeld.